a comprehensive religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Ma farratna fil kitabi min shay." We have provided for every need in the Quran al-Kareem. So, for various need, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instituted rules and concepts which take care of the members of the community. For example, as you all know, zakat is collected from those who have means, and though it is distributed among those who need the money. Then you have sadaqat and kaffarat, and there are other forms of financial support which one member of the society or a group of the society gives to another group of the society, so that everyone who is living in an Islamic society can live in without really starving, and all his basic needs are met. In the area of commercial financing, as most of you know, there are two kinds of financing arrangements. One is which is called equity-based financing, where some people will buy stocks in the market, and then the company whose stock you will purchase will do business with the money that you have given. And at the end of the year or periodically, they will give you a report as to how much money they made, dividends, and then you will sell the stock, and depending on how the company has performed, whether it is done well or has not done well, the value of this stock will either go up and down. This concept finds its origin in the concept of mudaraba and musharaka in the Sharia, whereby someone, and this mudaraba is not really an Islamic, although Islam refined some of the rules of it to take out the unfairness of the previous ayyam al-jahiliyyah. But mudaraba is found in even the code of Hammurabis. And as you know, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, before he became a prophet of Allah, he did mudaraba with his wife, who was a wealthy person in the community of Makkah, and she gave his money to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He took that money and went to Syria and traded with it, and came home, and when he returned to Makkah, they distributed the profit which was generated out of that business among themselves. So mudaraba and musharaka is a form where one person, Rabbul Mal or financier, gives money, another person, Mudarib, the worker, takes the money, works with it, and if they make a profit, then they distribute among themselves, both Mudarib and Rabbul Mal among themselves, in accordance to the share that they have agreed. If there is a loss, on the other hand, then the money or the financial loss falls on the Rabbul Mal. So if he has given Mudarib 100, and Mudarib says, well, we lost, and there is only 80 left, so he'll get the 80, and Mudarib will not get anything. He'll lose his effort. So two important things to remember in this mudaraba and musharaka: the profit is distributed from the actual profit, not as how much money you gave me and for how long you gave me, which is the interest type of profit distribution, regardless of whether the venture has made any profit or not made any profit. The other type of financing which existed in the old time, as well as which has been recognized by the fuqaha, was a form of sale where a person would come to a merchant and he would say, I would like to buy this horse, and the merchant would say, fine, it is 100 dinar, and the person said, well, I don't have the money, I don't have 100 dinar, I'll give you 100 dinar in 1 year. And the merchant would say, in that case, it is 110 dinar. Cash 100, on a deferred payment basis 110. And if you say 2 years, it's 120. If you say 3 years, 130. Now, this is a fixed return. It does not depend as to what you do with the horse and how the business is. It's a fixed return known to both the merchant as well as the buyer, merchant seller and the buyer, on day one, that there will be a 10% profit or 5%, whatever they agree. there is a 5% charge for financing. But it was an integral part of the trade. So in a trade, you are allowed to charge more. And this is called Bay' bis-Saman al-Ajil, a deferred payment sale, which is known today in Malaysia as BBA, Bay' bis-Saman al-Ajil. Another form of sale where the seller needed financing. The first one is the buyer needs financing. He doesn't have money, but he wants to have a horse or a camel or a house or something. The second one was for the seller. The seller, let's say, was a farmer. He has land, but he does not have money to buy seed, to pay for the labor, to grow the crop. So the buyer will come to him and say, fine, I'll pay you now, today, full amount. But you delivered the grain or the barley or it always has to be a fungible thing, which if he cannot grow himself, he can always buy it from the market. It's not a specific thing like a house or something specific. So a fungible item, and let me say, okay, I'll pay you now and deliver the goods in a year from now. And if the buyer who is paying in advance knew that what he is buying is worth 100 dinar, he was allowed to pay 90. And the seller would happily accept 10% discount or less than what the market value is expected of his grain, let's say a ton of grain in a year. And you say, fine, give me 90 now, because it's worth it. I can buy the seed. Without it, I will not be able to grow anything, and I will not be able to feed my family. In both of these, and this one is called salam, which is approved by the Prophet ﷺ himself, this type of transaction. In these transactions, both Bay' bis-Saman al-Ajil and Bay' al-Salam, you knew on day one what would be the return from the financing. From the financing. Not, I mean, the sale from, profit from sale was different. He may have bought the horse for 8 dinar or 80 dinar and selling it for 100. But when he adds another 10 or 20 or 30, that other 10, 20 is really from the financing, not from profit from sale. Because if he paid cash 100, he would still have made a profit. But that first profit would have been from the profit from sale, not from the financing. Now, and this was known to Khulafa. This is called also Fuqaha always refer to this. لِلزَّمَنِ حَظٌّ فِي السَّمَنِ. For the time, there is a share in the price. الزمن حظ في الثمن ويزاد في الثمن للزمن. For the time you increase. In fact, some fuqaha have said that if a person has added, let's say, 12 dinar, because the horse was for 100, and someone came to me and said, I'll pay you in a year. So he said, well, in that case, 112. And 2 months later, the buyer dies. When someone dies, the whole debt becomes payable immediately. You must pay. In that situation, or if he wants to make an early payment, the fuqaha say that in that case, you can only charge 2. Because for each month, you added 12 for 12 months. So now, since you are getting all your money within 2 months, not 12 months, therefore you can only get 2. You must. And if he doesn't agree, the seller does not agree, then the qadi can force him to accept only 2 and write off the other 10. Because 10, for 10 months, he did not use the financing. So that shows that it was really from the financing. Now, this is how it was. And of course, you all know we slept afterwards, and our ijtihad did not grow with the time. And 40 years, or maybe a little more than 40 years ago, when we woke up, we found that we have been ruled by colonials and others and this and that, and a banking system has developed, which was a useful system. You can deposit your money, you're not afraid of losing it, or somebody come and breaking the window and take all your money. You can knock at windows, punch a few numbers, and you get the cash from ATM machine and write checks and all the benefits. So banking system really was very helpful. But the banking system was based on only two things, two kind of transaction. Bank borrows money at interest and lends money at interest. And according to most scholars, even though there were some voices which said no, this banking interest is not really a riba, most prominent among them is Azhar Sharif fatwa Sheikh Tantawi has given. Some people say that it was not him anyway, but there are some voices, but very minority, small voices, which have said that the banking system is not really the riba which has been prohibited by the Quran itself. But anyway, you have now a banking system, and the question came as to how we can use banks to finance Muslim trades. Muslim want to buy a house, a Muslim wants to buy a car, a Muslim wants to do this and that. How does he get money if he doesn't have money? So some suggestions were made that let's revive the concept of mudaraba, where the bank will take money on the basis of mudaraba and give money on the basis of mudaraba. So let's say the bank will say, give me your billions and billions to all the depositors. I will act as a mudarib, and as a mudarib then he will become a Rabbul Mal to those people who will come to the bank who need money, and say, okay, whatever you make, whatever profit you make from the trades that you will make, I will have half of that. And then that half, let's say got $50 from this side as a Rabbul Mal, pass it as a mudarib to the depositors. But unfortunately, this system didn't work, because in many transactions that where the Muslim really needed money, for example, you want to buy a house, how do you do mudaraba? It's not really a commercial transaction where you're going, buying, selling, and generating profits and all that. You just buy a house and you live in it. Or you buy a house, a car, and you ride, go from the office to house. What is the mudaraba in it? What is it that is really generation? There is no buying, selling and all that as it is done in the normal business. The other problem was, because when you draft a contract or when you write a contract, you are not living in empty quarters. You are living in a civic society in the United States of America, in UK, in other places where there are laws. So the banks, including those banks who are conventional as well as Islamic, they were operating under local laws. They were licensed by the central banks. And the central banks do not allow banks to get into commercial risks or take commercial risks or enter into commercial activities. The most they would allow, if somebody has defaulted on a loan, to take the ownership of the house under the procedure is called foreclosure. The bank does not get his money, they take the house, they sell it in the market, and to that small period of time they can keep the ownership of the house. But otherwise, banks are not in the business of buying real estate, selling real estate, buying cars, selling cars and all that. Banks are in the business of financing. And Islamic banks also, even until now, every Islamic banks operate under the license from a central bank, whether you are in Saudi Arabia, in Mecca, or you are in London or here. Every financing institution operates under a license from the OCC or FSA in the UK, or central banks of this and central bank or reserve bank of this and that. And they do not allow you, a bank, to take commercially, because they don't want small people who have deposited their $1,000 or pension money and this money and that money, that you go out and do businesses with this, and then you say, oh, sorry, we lost your money. The whole concept behind banking is that you have to have a place where you can feel secure that you have put the money there, and it will be there when you need it. So this was a big hurdle. Secondly, the challenge which was faced was tax related. As you know, interest in most societies, and we are living in a society which is overwhelmed with the interest. Interest is taxed on a reduced rate. Interest can also be claimed, as deduction from the income and all that. Whereas the rental income or profit from sales, they do not enjoy the same thing. So you are faced with a situation that sort of the marketability of the Islamic product. If you make them too expensive, then there are some devout Muslims who say, yeah, I will still buy it even if it is 1,000 times more expensive than the conventional financing. But most people say, why is it that the Islamic financing costs more than the conventional financing? Aren't we all doing the same thing? If I go and take 100,000 from a conventional bank to buy my house, my monthly payment is 1,000. If I do the same thing from an Islamic bank, my monthly payment is 1,000 plus 100 or 200. Why? Why is it that I am paying more? So people are conscious about that, and therefore Islamic finance, in order to be survive, by the way, it's within 40 years, is now $1 trillion industry. There are about $1 trillion under its assets in Islamic finance. So it's growing very fast. People demand it, but then they also would like you to be competitive. So therefore, you have this interest problem. The other problem was the way, and let me go back here. Now, they said the way to finance it, because the important thing about the interest is this: on day one, you know what your return is. When I give you 100 and you say, give me 110, I know I'm getting 10%, and that's the concept of interest. In the deferred payment sale and discount payment sale, salam sale, you got exact return on day one. So it looked very much like as if you are lending money at 10%, which is the conventional, and that's what confused many people even during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. They thought this and this is the same thing. Say, innamal bay'u misla riba. Quran says, they said that bay' is the same as riba. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, no, there is a difference. Ahallallahu al-bay'a wa harrama al-riba. There is a difference. It doesn't go into detail, but the details is very simple. If you want to, let's say if I have a house and its value is 100,000, and you come to me and say, I want to buy your house. I say, fine, give me 100,000, I'll give you the keys and I'll transfer the title to you. You say, but I will not be able to give you 100,000 today. What about if I give you 10 years from now? I say, well, in that case, it has to be 200,000. Why? Because I'm going to give you the key today, and you will pay me 100,000 in 10 years. In the meantime, you are living for free in that house. So from day one, you are receiving a benefit from that sale. And therefore, if I add another 100,000 based on 10 years, it's a compensation for the benefit that you are getting, the use of the house for another 10 years. And therefore, this is not the same as giving you cash now for more cash later. This is a sale where there is an item which is being sold, which has a benefit and utility, and you are going to make use of it for the next 10 years, even though you didn't pay anything. So therefore, there is a difference between this and that transaction. And therefore, one has been allowed by all fuqaha, with the exception of Zain al-Abidin and few scholars, but otherwise, this is the industry. This is the core principle of the Islamic finance industry today, that the bank will own something, will sell and sell it with a markup, or bank will own something and then lease it. And the lease payment will have not only the amount of money the bank is spent in acquiring the product and the goods, but also a markup for the financing. Now, the problem which really create, and it is causing many problems now that the industry is developed and some breakdowns have happened, some defaults have taken place, as you know, in Dubai, big sukuks have default and all that, is that the banks were not merchant. Banks are not merchant. They cannot be merchant. And therefore, when the scholars insisted that the bank must buy first the item, and let me give you an example. You want to buy a house, in a conventional setting, you will go to a bank and say, I need $100,000 to buy this house. And the bank will, let's say, approve your application. They will lend you $100,000 at 10%, and you will pay me, let's say, over a 10-year period, $200,000. In an Islamic system, the bank will buy that house first for $100,000, and then 2 minutes later sell it to you for 200,000. Now, this now is a sale contract, and the purchase price of 200,000 is not split between principal and interest. It's just one price, and this price from sale. Now, the problem is, suppose there is a leak in the house. The roof leaks or the foundation settles. Normally, if you have bought it directly from the seller, you will go to the seller and say, under law so and so and article so and so, product liability or product warranty and this and that, fix this car or fix this house. Here, if you go to the seller, the person who really sold the house, he would say, I don't know you, because you really didn't buy the house from that person. The bank purchased it and then sold it to you. So you go to the bank, and the banks are not really in the business of warranties. They don't have a back office, workshop where they can fix the car and all that and say, bring it 6 o'clock and I'll change the engine or I'll change this tire and this. The banks don't want to hear it. All that they have is really small financing. They are competing with the next door conventional bank, which does not have to carry all this responsibility. So this person in a way is lost. The other thing is, since there are two sales involved here, the bank will buy the house first from the owner and then sell it to you. There are two sale taxes that come into play. And that, if you are buying a house, expensive house, that can really make the whole transaction very expensive. So then you run to the tax authority and say, listen, we only did this for Sharia reason. Actually, in reality, there is only one sale. And we try to convince them. And in England, the stamp duty was exempted, because those who are in tax authorities and those who are in that decision maker, they saw that really what you are trying to do is really just going around, and it's the same thing, and therefore they are not losing any revenues. It's one sale. Only for Sharia purpose you have gone through this, and therefore there is a lot of what we call sort of like fictitious transactions in order to justify a Sharia from a Sharia point of view, and that has created a very much concern about the Islamic finance which exists in the mind of the people. It really is the same thing. You just did a little fictitious sale, and sometimes it is so superficial that it's really very superficial. If you are in the practice, that you will know that, and there is a lot of concern, because people know that really is what matters is the main transaction is the financing and not this sale first. Sharia scholars, while insisting on this, the institution normally is trying to minimize its impact by going to the tax authorities and all that. So what we have now, transactions which are called murabaha, ijara muntahiya bitamlik, musharaka mutanaqisa, istisna muwazi, salam muwazi, tawarruq, sukuk. In the common theme in all these transactions is that financing is achieved by two transactions. First, in order to set the principal in a conventional set, the bank will buy something, let's say for 100,000, and that is, in a conventional setting, that would be considered a principal. And then bank will sell it or lease it, and that would include the first 100 plus the markup based on time value of money. The longer the payment, the higher the amount, and in fact even LIBOR is used for benchmarking the markups. So that would be the amount, and therefore one transaction sets the principal, the other the what you call the markup. Similarly, if it is a construction contract, the customer will come to the bank and say, I would like to have this ship built, and I have negotiated with General Dynamic or whosoever this is specification and everything, and this is the schedule of payment, every detail has been discussed, and they will charge 100 million for building this ship. The bank will then start calculating when they will make the first payment and when the second payment and when the repayment of all these money of 100 million that will be paid to the shipyard will take place, and say, well, we, by calculating we need 20 million on top of it. So the bank will sign a contract. He'll say, I will build this ship. Now banks don't build the ship. They don't even have a screwdriver, let alone building a ship. They say, I will build this ship. And therefore, and then for 120 million. And then under istisna muwazi, he'll get it built for 100 million. So while the bank is paying 100 million, as the installments come due, he will collect 120 million over a period of time. Now, many case law has come up now in Malaysia and UK, where the problem is, while the real core thing which is happening between the bank and the customer is the financing. The contracts are written in the form of sale, lease, construction, and so on. If everything goes fine, you can call a lamb, a cow, a lamb, or whatever. But when things break down, then a doctor has to ask, what have you been eating? And if he finds, actually you call it a cow, but you have been eating a chicken or whatever, then he will have to treat you on the basis of what is really happening. And this is the problem which the courts are having all over the world. For example, in Malaysia, there are 14, 15 cases where someone has bought a house. I'll give you an example. Let's say the house was 100,000 and the financing was for 20 years. So the bank calculated based on LIBOR that the markup should be 200,000. So 100,000 plus 200,000. And the bank buys the house for 100 and sells it within 300,000. 5 years later, the person defaults for whatever reason or dies. And he asks, how much do I owe you? And say, well, you purchased the house for 300,000. In the last 5 years, you have 50,000. You have paid 50,000. You owe us 250,000. And he say, well, you know, my neighbor or my brother or somebody did the same transaction with the conventional bank, and they said, well, we lent you 100,000. Last 5 years, you paid 50,000. Of the 50,000, 5,000 went towards the 100,000, towards your principal, and the rest interest, and you owe us only 95,000, and you are telling me 250,000. He said, well, don't compare it with the conventional. This is contract of sale. Judges found that in substance, in essence, these were really financing transaction. No, we don't care what you call it. These were financing arrangements, and he will only pay 95,000. And there was a big political uproar among the banks, because there were billions of dollars of transaction involved, and Court of Appeal overruled all these decisions, which were fair. And can you imagine, you buy a house which is only worth 100,000, 5 years later you are made to pay 250,000 for it, having already paid 50,000? And so I even talked to the Supreme Court judge who had made their decision. I happened to be speaking in Malaysia at that time, and I said, you know, if people know that this is what can happen to you in case of default or difficulty, how many people will come and buy, get financing from Islamic finance? A contract, for example, lease contract or musharaka mutanaqas, I call it diminishing partnership contract. The title at the inception, let's say, if the title is supposed to be the way it's supposed to be, according to the Sharia scholars who have allowed this, the Islamic financial institution will have the title, let's say it is 80-20 partnership, and the house is 100,000, they will pay 80,000. You pay 20 down payment, and the house is now owned collectively between the two parties. But as you pay every month, you are paying part of the 80,000. So the banks and that's why it is called diminishing mushara. Bank's share is diminishing, but it in reality does not go into the title. The title remains 80 until the 10 or 15 years financing, whichever you have taken. And in case the bank or the financial institution goes into receivership, as it is happening these days in Canada to one of the organization which has this diminishing partnership contract using this kind of situation, the customer who has maybe paid 90% of the payment, the receivers, creditors of the receiver, which is the institution which has financed that thing, will come and say, well, no, legally you own this, and therefore we want to have these homes. So what is in Dubai court, there is a transaction called lease to own, ijara muntahiya bit tamlik. The bank buys the house and then leases it, and the rentals include the bank's out of pocket money plus the markups or the financing cost. If you default in the last just 5 payments and you cannot pay, technically the bank can say this house is mine, you were just a tenant, even though you have paid for that house. So what I say is Islamic finance is a work in progress, is still developing, and therefore one should not, and these people should hear this, those who are in the industry, those lawyers and Sharia scholars and others, they should hear this concern, because now when things are breaking down, people are finding out, because it's not just enough to have halal water. And the water is halal, isn't it? But you have to be careful if it is it has bugs in it, or it has been taken from tap, which is not safe. So you have to measure not only the things is Sharia compliant or not Sharia compliant, but whether it is also safe to drink. How much risk are you taking by signing these contracts? There are no industry, so I'm not discouraging people, but I'm saying those who are in this industry or those they are selling these products, first they have to be very transparent. Secondly, institutions such as this masjid or ISNA or ICNA or other financial institution, they should not only look at the Sharia compliance part of it, whether you own the asset before you sold it, etc. But what are the risk elements in it? Because there is no RAF NADR or consumer protection agency doing it, which are done in the conventional finance area. So I think there should be a debate, and to start with there should be a debate as to what type of time value of money is permitted in Islam and what is not permitted in Islam. Don't lump everything into one and therefore start going around it and distort the nature of the relationship of the parties. The third thing which I always say is that our hilla and hurma should be really based on maqasid al-sharia and not on form and number and structures. What is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted from us when He said riba is haram? The evil, look at the evils, look at the oppressiveness, look at the unjustness, look at all this, and then base the transaction on that basis and say this is haram. And then what is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to promote in order to avoid discord and disputes and create harmony, as Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayatul Dain goes through length. Everyone should write and let the borrower dictate the terms and do not leave small details. All those things I think are there in the Holy Quran, and one should really try to develop a system without distorting the nature of the relationship. I think these are some of the words which I wanted to say, and if you have any question, please feel free to ask. Yes, I think. I think having maybe said a few things which might discourage some of you to say, well, let me think twice before I go into Islamic financing of the houses and all that. I would like to say that there is one area of Islamic finance where we can really feel very proud of, and that is the sale of debt. Sale of debt, or these papers, worthless papers. You have something, junk bonds and credit default swaps and derivatives and all those things, where you really don't know what you're buying. And therefore, Islamic finance or Sharia scholars have insisted that it should be asset-based. You see, if you see the difference between a time value of money which is not allowed, a time value of money where it is allowed when it is an integral part of a trade, when it really does not separate with the actual transaction. Therefore, a merchant was able to sell his horse or his camel or whatever he was selling for more on a deferred payment basis, because there was some trade taking place, as opposed to a lender who was just giving money and taking more money. And therefore, those who say that interest of bank is not riba, they are, I think, making a very broad statement, because a bank can lend you money without asking you what are you going to do with it, so long as you give them a collateral. So if you go to a bank and say, I want to borrow $100,000, and you leave your wife's jewelry wants $200,000 with the bank will give you $100,000. They won't ask you what you're going to do with that money. In an Islamic finance, if there is a financing, it must be connected to a real commercial trade and activity, either on equity based or what we call debt based, which is what we have today, murabaha and ijara type of contract, which have been sort of trimmed into debt instruments. So that's one area I think Islamic finance has really contributed, that we are not sitting on a huge amount of debts. Debt is discouraged in Islam. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ghalabatil daini wa qahli rijal. Oh Allah, I seek your refuge, that I be overwhelmed by the debt. So debt is not a form of business. You don't borrow at 5% and hoping to make 50% in commercial activity. That's not the high leveraging. All those things are really discouraged under the Sharia. And that's an area, and also the area of gharar. La tabi' ma laysa lak, or ma laysa indak. Don't sell what you don't own. A lot of it's happening. You are sometime, and then betting type of business transaction, where you really was betting, and sometimes you are not even betting on something in which you have interest. You are just betting on that this stock will go up or go down, and if it goes down, I make money, and you are hoping that it goes down rather than go up. So these kind of transactions which have really created a havoc in the society, where Islamic finance has been able to control, and I hope they stay strong in it, because there is a lot of pressure towards introducing some derivative which are nothing more than gambling. Yes, please.
My experience with financing this country is that when the banks lend you, they will obviously do a thorough investigation of what they're lending against, a property or business.
Mm-hmm.
They will. So the banks will really, they will not just lend you and say, okay, spend it wherever you want to spend it. So there is a specific purpose. Besides the current, the products that have evolved more recently, like these junk bonds and derivatives and SIVs and all those things, those are the creation of the Wall Street. But in essence, especially in this country, I think the home financing, I think, has been very much through savings and loans, and they will do the appraisals and they will value it and they will lend you against it, and you will put up some of your money and equity, and they'll share, and so on and so forth. And the interest rate they would charge you is would be reasonable. In other words, if you compare it to the concept of usury, they will not say, well, you know, I feel like charging 30% because I know that you're desperate and I can get away with it, and therefore, you know, I can do it. It's very competitive, and normally it's tied with inflation and other factors and economic conditions, the time value money that you described. So keeping all that in mind, compared to what you described, I honestly don't see that there is very much difference between the concept of Islamic banking and the conventional banking that's available to us today. So,
okay, I will not go as far as you have gone. I'll try to take one transaction and read its terms and conditions in detail, and then make a judgment, rather than making conventional is better than Islamic or something like that. Now, the transaction which you described is more Sharia compliant than some of the transactions which have been allowed under the Sharia rules. For example, if you are buying a house, and let's say appraisal has proved that this is the real worth of the house and your capabilities of paying the monthly payments and everything, it's all the whole process of approval of the application and the house and inspection and termites, and you go through the whole thing. And the bank then will not give you the money. We give the money to the owner of the house. You don't see that check. And so the money goes to the owner. And then you get the title. And let's say 5 months later you want to sell that house. You will not be allowed to sell that house and get the money and put it in your pocket unless you first satisfy that debt. Otherwise the mortgage will not be released. Period. Simple. The whole system, it is connected with the trade. This financing is connected with the trade. Now compare that to Islamic financing. The only difference you will see here is for 1 minute the bank is asked to own the property. And now even that is not happening. There is something called an undisclosed agency concept which has been introduced in many cases. For example, if you are a government of Bangladesh and you want to buy oil from Aramco, crude oil, Aramco will sell you the oil. But if you are looking for financing, then you go to the bank, and the bank say, okay, fine, I'll buy the oil from Aramco, and then I'll sell it to you with a markup. Aramco says, sorry, I can't sell you. You have to be either a refinery or you have to be either a government. We cannot just sell oil to just anybody who walks in here. And there are many others. You are a diplomat in a country where you get 25% discount if you buy a Mercedes car. You want to buy a Mercedes car, so you go to an Islamic bank and say, I need financing, and the bank says, okay, I'll buy the car from the Mercedes dealer and then sell it to you. Mercedes dealer says, I cannot give you the discount, 25%. You are a bank. You show me your diplomatic credential, I'll give you the discount. So there are many situations where you are forced not to really take title directly as a bank from the seller. That the title has to go directly to the customer of the bank. So, and relaxation have been made in that under the undisclosed agency concept, where the bank will appoint you as its agent. It's all very superficial, I think. But what I'm saying is that in this transaction, from day one until the last 30 years, if it is a 30-year fixed mortgage, you and that land and that house, you are connected. You cannot sell that unless you pay off the loan. In a tawarruq contract, which is a big contract, these days billions of dollars of transaction are taking place, you simply need money. You need 100 million today, and you want to pay 110 million in a year from now. The bank will sell you something that you don't even sometimes know what it is, some platinum or something, from a commodity dealer in London for 110 million. And then you will already know where to sell it because it's all arranged. Within 2 hours, the whole transaction, you will sell that. Now you own the platinum and you owe the bank 110 million. But you need 100 million, so you sell that to another agent for 100 million. Now you got 100 million in your pocket and you owe 110 million to the bank. Where is the commodity? It's gone. You don't own it. It's between this broker and that broker. It's exchange because it's all prearranged. So this is a pure give me money now, I'll give you money later. It is according to Sayyidina Ibn Abbas, darahim bidarahim dakhala baynahuma harira. It's a cash for cash deal and you just put some harira, or which is silk shirt in between. Somebody came to him. So I think some of this transaction, if you take transaction by transaction and then you compare, you find that this is more asset based, asset connected, integrated financing than the other one. But I will not go and endorse everything which conventional banks are doing as more Sharia compliant. Yes, Fadal.
No, just to follow up on that, what I'm saying is that my thought was that in this particular case, but of course there are so many products out there, in terms of commodities and things you've described, that we cannot blanket it. I agree with you. But even then, I mean, even the conventional lenders, even the private equities or whatever, they do their own due diligence, and no one will give even a commodity trader just a hunk of money and just say, okay, But so there's always vested interest, and they want to make sure that there is that somehow they're all connected to it. But I agree with you in terms of the.
In this commodity trader, all that you did really just gave some commission.
Yeah, exactly.
You made the transaction to more expensive. No.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Mazen. I'm Arabic man from Syria. I just sit here today and to listen you, sir, and brother, because I'm happy when I listen that. I won't give my English not good for that.
تفضل تكلم بالعربي أنا أترجم لك.
بالعربي أشكرك.
تفضل.
أنا رجل عربي. أنا كنت في دبي. I will try to speak to English.
طيب تفضل.
And you try what I don't understand.
تفضل.
I'm before in Dubai businessman, big businessman before 12 years from 1998 at 2009. I have driver and my account as $1 million in the bank and like that and like that. That time the bank system, when you put some money, he speak, we will give you some offer or some like that. When you not have, we give you some credit or like that or like that. But in that time, I believe about my God, about Allah, and about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For that, in that time, when I see somebody need money, and I'm rich man, in that time, I give it. And I don't look at how much I give. I speak, this is my business with God. This is original bank, Allah bank, in that time. This is before long time. At now, before 50 days, this is war in my country. I'm go to Syria visitor, and I have big problem there with system, and run away, and I come to America. I'm in America, no have just $3. No have clothes, no have money, take it everything from me. I come to America, I look at, oh God, I don't have anybody. I don't know anybody. I don't know have money, I don't know have anything. I'm here in LAX, Los Angeles airport, without anything, just with you. Before I'm rich man, now I'm nobody. Please help me, God. In this time, you see what the bank, sorry, I'm sorry. In this time, you see the God sent somebody for you, and somebody help you, and somebody take care about you. That meaning what you speak, sir, about when you make something, this is the bank give you some like that, and the God give you. Now I'm here in this country. I'm very happy and I'm very relaxed, and I thanks my God because help me, because that's I'm do it with God. That is what mudaraba. You speak about mudaraba. But my question, Doctor, he asked me about my question. My question, with somebody here in America, he helped me, but he talked to me, please, don't speak thank you. When he helped me, I speak thank you. You help me. He speak, please don't speak thank you. Speak thanks God. Okay, thanks for God. I know that from my heart. But why I cannot speak to this man thank you? This is my question, and thank you.
Okay. Can we take 2-3 more questions so I can answer altogether?
Okay,
Yeah.
The thing is, we haven't considered currency as a commodity. I work for a Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. So why not a Islamic country create currency, gold dinar used to be, or silver, something like that, which is a commodity. So we can lend directly whatever they wanted, especially in Islamic country.
Yeah, I think this is a very important question. Finished?
And
So-
the other thing is like what you were telling about the stock market. So short selling is un-Islamic.
Yes.
Okay, and the other thing is if some businessmen need working capital, especially to pay for salaries, so how he can...
Yeah, the short answer for that is they use tawarruq, which I explained. You need $100,000 for working capital, and you will come to the Islamic bank, you will buy some commodity for 110,000. Let's say you need it for 1 month or 1 year, and then you sell those to a third person, someone, and you get the money. I mean, this was done in the time of the Prophet, and it is a very national thing. For example, I go and buy something, a car, and which is permitted in Sharia, that you pay, you don't have to pay the full amount immediately. You can buy it in installments. So now I purchase a car for $10,000, and I am bound to pay $10,000 over a period of time. And then a month later, I really need money. So what I do, I say, well, maybe I can do without the car. So I take the car and sell it to someone for 9,000. So I have now 9,000, and I still owe the dealer 10,000. But this was allowed. This is okay. This is something that you own. You have taken custody. But when things are pre-planned, and that's why the fuqaha academies of Organization of Islamic Council, Munaddamat al-Mu'tamar al-Islami in Jeddah, their fiqh committee say, when tawarruq is munaddam, murattab, it is organized, you know, walking in that you really need money and you're going to go through some fake purchase and sale of some commodity, then it is not allowed. But if it just happened that you bought something 6 months ago and suddenly you needed some money and you say, well, what do I sell? Should I sell my jewelry or should I sell something else? And you chose to sell that car which you have purchased on installments. Yeah, fine, go ahead, do that.
With this system of tawarruq, whom are they deceiving? Themselves, or they are deceiving Allah, or what? I mean, what are they doing by doing this, by buying this, and then somebody says that I'll give you more, and then just within a few hours the whole thing is transaction. What is happening? I mean, what kind of system is this?
This is it.
How come it is allowed?
There are some banks who do this, like 90% of their transactions are based on this. There are some banks I know that do billions of dollars worth of tawarruq, commodity murabahas.
Can I, do the sisters have any questions?
Sorry, yeah. Well,
Do the sisters have any questions?
it is permitted by IOFI Sharia board, but it is not permitted by the Sharia board of Rabatat al-Alam al-Islami and Munazzamat al-Mutawwar Islami. They say it is riba. If it is organized, pre-planned, pre-arranged, premeditated. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Thanks very much for a very enlightening discussion of the realities of Islamic finance. There, as you said, it is a developing, evolving work in progress, and therefore there is an intense debate going on. Now, there are some people, some respected people within the Muslim world, who actually question the very idea of Islamic bank. They say that the term itself is self-contradictory. You cannot have an Islamic bank. The very idea of having a fractional reserve system through which banks can create money out of nothing, that is totally un-Islamic. So how can you have any bank as an Islamic bank?
Very, very point. I mean, a fractional reserve system as well as fiat money, which is not commodity money, which is not backed by gold or silver or any other commodity, is just piece of paper. Say, this is worth this much. And if someone doesn't take it, accept it, then I will take care of him. Fiat. And then Muslim countries printing money, which is pegged to this fiat money. So what you have only the scenery is different, a little Arabic and there, but actually it is pegged to the dollar, which is fiat money, which is not based on any commodity. So this one, if you read Al-Imam Ibn Al-Qayyim in A'lam Al-Muwaqqa'in, he writes pages after pages about kasadul fulus, that the money should not really change value. Money is like you want to weigh yourself, you want to go to a machine that will not change every time you step on it. Sometime it will show you 150 pounds, another time show you 200 pounds, and then some other pounds. Inflation, deflation, inflation, deflation. That measure must be constant. When that becomes potentially changing, then your whole system, you feel like gold price has gone up. It's really gold price has not gone up. The dollar value has gone down. All the other currencies that are pegged to that currency. So I think that is a very, very big problem. So what do you do? What can you do? I mean, that's another issue whether banking system or banking is allowed or not. I think you will agree that you feel more secure if you have some money instead of leaving it under your pillow or in your closet and going away from the house. That is better. You put it in a safe place, and that you can have access to it if you go to New York. And you can write checks and things like that. All the conveniences that come with it. I mean, some people will say that even if you have checking account where you don't take even interest, even that is haram. Why? Because when you put 100,000 in a bank, and the bank gives you checkbooks, and the bank appoint a security guard to save your money, and the bank then make that money available to you when you go to New York or to London or to any other place, but simply giving you a little plastic card which you can give and you can buy things and all that. The bank is giving you your 100,000 back plus all these services, and this is riba, because it's not just 100,000 you are taking back. You are taking more than 100,000. It's like I lend money to you, and then every day I come to have lunch with you too. So I gave you $100, and I got back $100. But then how about these lunches, free lunches that I am taking? So therefore, fuqaha said that when you give money to someone as a loan, don't even take a ride with him. Don't go and eat in his place unless it is a habit that you had before lending the money. In fact, I heard a lecture from a rabbi who said that if you used to say hello before the lending transaction took place, it is ribit, if the borrower say hello, 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 he said that You used to say just hello, and now you're saying 5 times hello. Riba. And in the Jewish tradition, it's not allowed to sell for more than the cash price under Jewish law. They consider that also riba. And this is from बता रहे थे ना आप एक दिन के जो laws के अंदर शिद्दत पैदा कर दिए. They have ghulu. Islam is not religion of ghulu. So Islam is a balanced religion. And therefore in certain areas time value of money has been allowed, and in other areas it's not allowed. Yes. Yes. Yeah. In fact, yeah, please, further.
Is there any Islamic bank that you can deal with, give you mortgage, personal loans in our area here? Orange County or LA?
Well, I was expecting this question. The problem is there are some institutions which are offering Islamic finance here in United States, but I cannot say whether it is fine or not. First, before I say yes, endorse, let's say okay, yes, so and so, even though Sharia scholars have given fatwa about their product, I wear 2 hats, as a Sharia scholar, but at the same time as a lawyer. And I will not say that you can drink this water just because it is halal. I will also make sure that this water is not from a contaminated source. Particularly if you happen to be in a country where a lot of water is contaminated, even sometimes bottled water is contaminated. So when you are dealing in an interest environment, that's a contaminated environment, and you have to be very careful as to risk aspects as well as the Sharia compliance aspect. Yeah.
Hazrat Imam Abu Hanifa had mentioned that in terms of 6 commodities, any exchange had to be in the same quantity and same quality. But outside of that, he gave an example that if you borrowed 12 eggs and you returned 13 eggs after a period of time, that it was not riba. So
No. I mean, this is the hadith, by the way. It's called riba al-fadl, where the Prophet ﷺ says, الذهب بالذهب والفضة والبر بالبر والشعير بالشعير والملح والملح والتمر بالتمر. All these 6, مثلا بمثل وسواء بسواء. يدا. Now, if the things change, for example, it's not gold for gold or silver for silver, but it is gold for silver, then it can be different. You can give 1 ounce of gold for 11 ounces of silver, so long as it is yadam biyad, spot sale. And these are sale, not loans transaction. And then the fuqaha have tried to find out what is the common denomination. Some say because they all are weighed, some other. I think, but then you find that later on fuqaha have divided these 6 into 2 groups. And today, for example, no one will object if you buy dates and pay for them later, not yadam biyad. So people will buy dates or qamh or sha'ir and pay later. Yadam biyad is not required in those, because now the qamh and sha'ir cease to happen to be what you call samaniyat, the money or the currency, because these things were used as currency during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. People will barter with these things predominantly. So Imam Ibn al-Qayyim said that this riba al-fadl actually is saddan li zari'a, is to close the door of riba nasiya, the real riba. Because what can happen is that if it is not hand to hand, and if I want to lend you 100 dinar for 110 dinar, I will not make the transaction between dinar to dinar, because that would be a clear violation. I will make the transaction between dinar and silver, silver payable later, but more than the market value of the conversion rate. So for example, if I may use the dollar terms, if the conversion rate between dollar and UAE dirham today is, let's say, 4, I will make 5 payable later. You give me $1 now, but pay me 5 dirham later, even though the conversion rate is only 4, because it is not yadam biyad. So anyway, I am lending you now money with 1 dirham, charging 1 dirham as interest. And so this is sort of like closing the door of riba nasiya.
What are the foreclosure laws in Islam?
Foreclosure is called rahan. If I borrow money from you, or I become indebted to you, a debt has been created, qard or then, as a result of a transaction between me and you. I purchased from you something and I didn't pay. I say, I'll pay you in a year from now. You can put a lien on that item that I have purchased, if it is not perishable, in other words, if it's not food or something. And in case I don't pay, you can sell that. Or if I loan you money, if you lend me money and I have put a collateral with you, you can sell it, you can foreclose. That's foreclosure.
For instance, I have a house. I'm a real estate broker, by the way.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about current situation. The current situation is the properties are completely upside down. And can I walk away and give my asset to the investor and don't pay the money?
If you mean the Islamic financier? Yeah, I mean that's what happened. If you have bought a house for 100,000 a year ago, and the market price is now 50,000, and you say, why should I keep paying 100,000 loan? I'll just, even though you can pay, you just walk away. They will take first the house, and depending whether it is recourseable or it's not recourseable, they will come after you. If they know that you have other assets that they can take money from you. No, even Islamic banking. Yeah, both. I think conventional also. Your contract, if you say that they can come after other asset other than the house, then they will come after you. But most of the time, very few situation where the person would have other assets that they can really go after.
But if you have no assets,
Well, what can they do? That's it.
Each state also has its own rules.
Yeah.
Some states, they can go after you, some others.
Yeah. Sure. I'm enjoying it, by the way, so if you are tired, let me know. I was telling my brother as we were coming from my nephew's house, I was sleeping in the car. I said, can I postpone it? But now I'm awake.
Thank you, Brother Mudassir, for being here. Alhamdulillah, we are blessed to have you here and give us this very informative discussion. We live in the United States. We have all this real estate in terms of our massages institutions, and we want to build. We want to keep expanding our programs, facilities, and things of that nature, income-generating sources. And many a times it's only through donation that we are able to move forward. What alternate is there to kind of bring about a financing mobility, whether through some kind of a discounted process, bonds, or anything which is Sharia compliant or within the Islamic context over here? What can we do as a community? Because there are billions of dollars probably of assets sitting there, but none of us are able to do anything. If you just take Orange County Masjid over here, we got 7 acres in prime Orange County. But if you had to put a gymnasium, the only way that could come about, or even an apartment complex, is perhaps through a donation or some kind of a thing. So what do you have for us?
It depends on what you want to do. You want to buy something, you want to develop a project, you want to build a gymnasium or another school or whatnot. I think Islamic financial instruments are there for achieving that. But I think I must say that our community really does not give money enough as compared to other communities. That's my experience when I was working here. with the community as an imam in the Islamic Center of New England and Islamic Center of Boston in the 70s and 70s actually. We don't give enough money. So I think there is a wealth, quite alhamdulillah, we are blessed. Our community is rich. So why think about borrowing and financing and all that when there are people that needs motivation? I think we should just motivate people and say, I mean, there was one time when I would be asked by our community to go to Saudi Arabia or Kuwait or here and there and go and get money for the masjid. I said, just give me permission to go in each one of your houses and pick a carpet from there. And I will leave a carpet underneath. You will still be walking on the carpet. And I will give you the masjid. Because they will ask you to go to so and so. Alhamdulillah, after 9/11, this has come down and community is now really standing on its feet, which is good. People from overseas are also not giving money. There are also governments are controlling as to who they give money, and therefore they don't even give to even genuine cases. Some now for the fear of being, listed in this and that place. So the community has found that there were resources within the community. We are living in the richest country in the world. So why go and I used to tell them, why making me go and stand in line with the same where there are people from Ethiopia and Bangladesh and these poor countries who are looking just for food. And we go and say, can we build a mosque, air condition, and the carpet will cost this much, and the gymnasium will cost this much, and basketball will cost this much. We should collect from here.
But just to follow, because I want to see if there is a way out on this thing, because we have quite a few schools that need to expand. Okay, let alone the masajids. You cannot use riba, you cannot use.
We can have bonds, Islamic bonds.
Islamic bonds.
It's called sukuk.
So, yes.
Yeah, I think that can be a good way of financing these things, where the people who will contribute or buy the suck, they will also get a return. Sukuk is a possibility. Yeah, not only for that. I think if the U.S. government can appreciate the potential of sukuk, it can really go. California, state of California, if they issue sukuk and allow Muslims to also buy, which is a secured way of investing, they can build bridges and all those projects, and Muslim be part of the community rehabilitation and development and schools. Sukuk has a great potential. Okay,
as far as sukuk is concerned, how do you
maybe you can pick who should ask. And
okay. If we're talking about sukuk, how do you determine the revenue on the sukuk?
Huh?
Like, how do you determine that?
Well, basically,
like let's say we're going to have a $1 million bond to do something to the masjid. What can we offer the people?
You need a bigger. For sukuk, you need more.
You need more than
that.
And
I am here.
And the revenue or the interest or the,
just finish at your convenience.
People will be looking for something in return.
Yeah.
So.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I'm young. I don't have as much experience in Islamic banking or the conventional banking as much as the people who've been asking these questions. But just one of the things that I always wonder is, in Islamic banking, so riba by itself, the problem is that you give someone $100 and then you over a certain period of time you get $150 back. So you're making profit. So one thing that I never understand is in Islamic banking, how is that institution sustainable if you're not making profit? So you have to make some sort of profit to sustain that situation or to sustain that institution. Otherwise, why would anyone do it? That's the first point. The second point is the word commodity, I think, is very subjective. We've been talking about houses. We've been talking about cars.
The word what?
Commodity. When we say commodity is a very subjective definition. It's a very subjective term because for you a commodity might mean a house, but for me a commodity might mean student loans. And then initially you said that if the bank can buy a house for, if the house is $100,000, the bank can buy a house for $200,000, and then initially tell you that, okay, this house is $200,000, over 10, 20 years you can pay me this much amount. But how is that different from me getting a loan, like a student loan or loan for a house, and the lending company telling me, okay, listen, your principal amount is $100,000, you have a fixed rate, which is different from a variable rate, which will change with the currency. You have a fixed rate, and over the next 20 years, you're going to pay me $200,000. So, I mean, I'm very inexperienced with financial banking, period, but that's just those are some of the confusions that I have.
Again, there is an answer, but personally, I think it's a superficial answer. They would say, we will sell you a degree, medical degree, this degree, or a seat, or lease you a seat at the medical school. So they will buy it from the medical school for 100 and sell it to you for 150, payable in 20 years. This is what is happening. Every time there is, give me money so I can give you a little more, there is some search of something to sell something and then make the difference between what you paid and what you received through that. I think there could be some better solutions. Yeah.
Could you hand over the mic there to the sisters, please? Go ahead, sister, please.
What is your advice to families living in America who want to own a home, yet they want to avoid the convention loans because they're law conscious, yet at the same time the Islamic financing is very young in America? And it could lead to some of the issues that you discussed earlier, and the families would be on their own to fend for themselves.
Well, personally, I would say if you really need a house and you don't have the money, then unless you are satisfied with the true, authentic nature of the Islamic financial product that is being offered to you, plus you are satisfied and you have really studies, and sometimes it's not very easy, the risk elements that may be involved in it, in case of default, in case of death, in case of bankruptcy of the institution and all that, then go for the Islamic one if you are satisfied with all the other things. But otherwise, I really don't see personally that why you, if you are buying the first house, and some fuqaha have given this fatwa also, that if it is your first house, you can buy it through the conventional means. Just make sure that you don't buy a house which is beyond your means, that you don't end up in a very luxurious and expensive house and then it becomes a burden and you cannot meet, and then you end up in foreclosures and all those difficulties. Buy something which is modest and pray Allah that your financial situation will improve so you can pay it off as soon as possible. That's it.
Inshallah, we'll take one last question. And with that, we will wrap up the study pastor. This will be the last question.
Okay.
Well, actually, when you just answered the sister's question, it kind of answers what I was going to ask you. It's just a really basic question. There's so many of us are making our payments through a conventional loan every month, and a lot of us feel guilty that we're paying this interest. So, I know I do. So, how should we view that? How should we feel about that?
You see, even if you buy it through an Islamic financial institution, what is happening, because there are so many laws under which these institutions operate, is sort of like form over substance. The form and the Arabic titles and names for the contract, etc., is one thing. But if you look at the substance of the transaction, they are not much different. And so much so that even the Islamic financial institution at the end of the year will give you a Form 1098, which says this is how much interest you have paid, and this is how much interest you have collected, we have collected from you. And you can submit it to IRS. Now, I am not current on the legal side of it. Maybe you can guide me on that. But my understanding is IRS so far has not given a ruling whereby these payments under Musharaka or Murabaha or Ijara, where the financial institution is giving you a 1098 and asking you to, telling you you can claim on Form 1040 that this is how much interest you have paid to get a deduction, that they have recognized that or they have accepted it and they say fine, we'll treat it as interest, as some other countries have done it, like UK, sukuk income, they will say we deem it interest. By the way, countries after countries after countries, at the request of Islamic financial institution, have passed legislations which say all payments under Islamic finance will be deemed interest. Why? Because when they look at the substance of the transaction and not the name and the form, they say this is conventional financing and therefore we are fine, we will treat it as interest and we will tax it at a reduced rate, and the accountants treat it as interest when going through the books, auditors, etc.
Most of these finance companies go to Freddie Mac.
Yeah, and then that's another issue, where you're getting your money from, because housing financing, housing industry is an expensive business. House, even simple house costs $300,000-400,000. So by the time you have financed 50 homes, you already are out of money if it was your own money, and then you don't want to let it sit there for the 30 years. So you need that money back so that you can keep doing it. Where do you get that money from? Either from a bank, which is conventional bank, and what is the relationship between that bank and the financial institution? Is it a loan with interest? So you are getting money at interest and then you're passing it to the customer, and the customer is sort of like between, you become like a mailbox between the conventional bank and the customer. So, or Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. I am a Sharia, I mean, used to be active Sharia advisor to Fannie Mae. I drafted contracts for them. They are not giving money on Islamic basis. They just take the contract, they are in the secondary market, and then all the payment goes through the Islamic financier. The customer will think that they are still dealing with that, but actually they are dealing with Fannie Mae. The money comes in, goes out. Yeah, under tawarruq. Actually, because of this, Qatar recently has passed a law. The conventional bank used to have Islamic windows. You have a huge multi-billion-dollar Islamic conventional bank, where they have a window. So from this window we'll finance Islamically. But everything back office and assets and this and that. So they said, no, you either Islamic or conventional, make up your mind. And they asked to close all the windows. Okay. That's fine.
Again, it has been a pleasure hearing a scholar. You can see the depth of understanding and knowledge that Brother Mudassir brings to the subject. I'm just kind of paraphrasing some of the things that he mentioned, and I think we need to have an open mind about these matters, because there's a pragmatic issue that is involved here, and Brother Mudassir touched on it. The Mudaraba was there in existence even before the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And what the Prophet ﷺ did was to take the unfairness out of the equation and make it more fair. So we need to learn to adapt. He also touched on the issue of the ijtihad, where our progress was stymied because of the fact that we stopped to think. And Hazrat Umar made a comment that we have to prepare our children for a generation which is going to be different than ours. And we see that. Every 6 months, there is a new iPhone coming in, a new requirement coming in, a new app coming out. So we are all getting used to these things. If you look 10 years ago, we don't know how we lived our lives without a cell phone. The critical point is that we are living in a society here in the United States for people to make economic progress, and a weak Muslim and a strong Muslim is also an important part of the equation. So if a person is very focused or very blinded by the fact and stops borrowing, the fact remains that if you take a case of a doctor or what have you, the person's income could be in a six-figure number, but half of it is going to go to Uncle Sam, unless you take a tax deduction, and that tax deduction is going to come from the way of an interest. And how you label it is another question. In our personal experience as CPAs, we had come across one instance where a brother had taken a deduction based on this 1098 that Brother Mudassir touched upon. And we had one big problem with the agent because he couldn't understand how someone could add up all of the interest together in one shot. So the only example that we could give was like the rule of 78, where you have, when you lease a car, the cost of the car is then added up to the interest that you're going to be paying, and then that is spread over the term. So we kind of had to bring him through the back door to make him understand that this interest is a deductible component. But I think we need to kind of understand that, Islam is a religion for all times. And we cannot stricture it or constrict it to a point where it becomes very difficult. And our own progress is going to be impacted. So we need to kind of think through, and people like Brother Mudassir are a beacon for us. We need to kind of think through, and hopefully we might, again, sometimes I have heard in the khutbahs, the khatib making a quick reference to interest just with a broad brush, saying that everything else is haram, and riba goes out the door. But there are institutions here, some of them call themselves as la riba, but I don't know if it is le riba, because they seem to be much more higher in pricing than what you could get at a conventional loan. So having said that, this is thought-provoking, and Brother Mudassir, it is very nice of you for this short while that you have stopped by in Los Angeles. But you should make more time and give us opportunities to understand and learn from you so that we can apply it in our daily lives. May Allah bless all of you for taking the time and being here. I'll ask Dr. Siddiqui to close with a little dua. Thank you.
I think the question still remains, that is how we can really establish for ourselves a system that is workable, at the same time complies with the basic spirit and basic maqsad, the basic objective of the Sharia. That is something really requires a lot of thinking, It cannot be done very just haphazard way as it is happening. It needs people who have good knowledge of Sharia, and people have good knowledge of the banking system, the economic systems, and the laws, all of these things. This is the kind of a combination that is really much needed at this time. So we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that to bring us to that point, inshallah. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم رب زدنا علما والحقنا بالصالحين رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا وأخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين صلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وأصحابه وأتباعه أجمعين برحمته.
Really good. You called it as you saw it.